Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cocktails and Rocktails with me, your most notorious groupie, Alice Rouse, author of this little guy right here. These books as well, where you can get all that down in the description. Go down, fiddle about, check it all out. And as always, thank you guys so much for just being an amazing family here. Welcome to all the cool new family who's just interacting or just hanging out. Thank you so much for just being cool, for being here. And I really have to thank everybody who's given me all the opportunities for interviews, whether you're part of the family that has gotten, or like Mark Leda and I trying to coordinate that for 2 years. I mean, just really, truly thank you for every opportunity, because I really do want to sell my book for a movie or such, because I think the world needs something original, sexy, funny, tongue in cheek. You know, I think it's time we have fun again. So, thank you to everybody for all the opportunities, for really helping me grow this channel, for being an amazing community and family here. You guys rock. I just truly cannot say thank you enough. Really, really, truly. I appreciate everybody here, whether you're interacting or not. You guys are the world to me. So, thank you so much. And speaking of thank you guys so much, you see the paperback. At some point, we're going to talk. And we kind of are going to talk about the end of an era, because a lot of people don't realize that Salt Lake City was the groupie capital of the world. Chris Holmes says it in Decline of Western Civilization Part 2. Lars Ulrich in a couple of interviews called it the groupie capital, because it was like the Mormon, there's a lot of beautiful women in this city. Not that I'm one of the most beautiful, I can hold my own space, but there are tons of beautiful women in this city. We're like a town of rebellious preachers' daughters. And all good things must come to an end. And so did the Salt Lake City groupie scene. Kristen and I were the last two to leave. We put the nail in the coffin, and it just wasn't the same sense, So we're going to read about that today. And before we read, but because sometimes deaths happen. We're going to finish off this bombastics. See you, Mr. Bombastic. Fantastic. Swallow smooth. We're going to finish this off. So, everybody, grab your bombastics, kick up your feet, and let's have a little cocktails and rocktails. Cheers, big ears. I just really love this one. It's so smooth. Most imperial stouts have a pretty good bitter edge to them, which I like, but sometimes you don't always want that. So the vanilla and cinnamon in this just really does. They just balanced it out. Oh no, I spilled in my book. Oh well, part of the lore of my mug. But yeah, really great, really smooth. If you guys see this in your neck of the woods, absolutely 100%. If you're a stout person, grab it. And we're going to read chapter 11 today. Like I said, the end of an era. Danny had already gone to California. Kristen and I were cruising up to Seattle, where was kind of the new Sunset Strip, because Sunset Strip had died, gone to heaven, lived its day. Grunge was the new thing, and Seattle was where it was all at. But that's not why we originally moved to Seattle, so let's talk about that. All right. So chapter 11, turn out the lights, the party's over, 1994. It is one thing to be there at the beginning of an era, but it can be a whole different thing when you are there for the end of one, even if it does go unnoticed by the rest of the world. While I would carry the old school groupie torch with me for years to come, the backstage world as we knew it was about to come to a slow death. The end would be signaled by the demolition of our groupie capital, the Salt Palace. The new arena, the Delta Center, had a pit where, like, it's the Vivint Arena, the Jazz, where the Jazz plays, all that here in Salt Lake. So there's still signs up that say Delta Center. They've never changed them. And I think it actually might be the Delta Center again. But anyway, so the Salt Palace, the new arena, the Delta Center, had a pit where the buses parked. And by pit, I mean 30 feet down into the ground, making sidewalk standing by a thing of the past. Because back in the 80s, if the band did not was not in town the night before, it was absolutely normal for us just to go stand out by the buses, see our guys, be like, hey, and they would drag us up from the sidewalk, gone for the night, right? So this is what the big joke in Salt Lake City when they built this was that was what they were trying to do. They did not like being the groupie capital of the world. We did though. So did the bands. But okay. So it was supposedly meant to ward off the likes of us. But being the devoted backstage chicks we were, you know we didn't go out that easy. Oh no, the Delta Center had already hosted concerts for some time now. Ozzy, Aerosmith, Jackal, and a couple others. We had figured it out in 5 seconds flat. Because you could still see us. There was just like these planters. So we would just lean over the planters and be like, hey! And they'd be like looking up going, oh, come on down. He just walked right down. Nothing could keep the groupies and rockers apart. Just deal with it, people. All right. But we had figured it out in 5 seconds flat. The groupies of Salt Lake City would go out with the same bang we had come into this rock and roll haven with. A big, fat, debaucherous one. Danny had now gone to Southern California with her musician boyfriend, pretty much leaving Kristen, Marie, and I to finish off what we had started so many years ago. But Kristen was about to be a goner as well. She had met and fallen for a man while in Seattle visiting her aunt, and now the idea was to move there. But she didn't want to go it alone. And I was always up for the adventure. I had liked it once with Danny before, so even through all that shit. You know. So why not give it another chance? Not to mention, the new wave of grunge rockers are all actually... But the new wave of grunge rockers all actually still lived there at the time. And that, for me, was the clincher. I don't remember much of the beginning of this year for some reason. I had quit the strip club I worked at for the past 4 years after a change in management. I had some money saved and a couple feature shows booked that could tide me over quite nicely. However, before Kristen and I would be the last to vacate our groupie wonderland, there had to be a good send-off, of course. I am not sure where it all started because I smoked a lot, hung with a slew of rockers, and did some drinking back then. I wasn't drunk, anything like that, but we partied, things blend in. Happens. Kristen and I had looked about the local papers, the local magazines, to see who was coming during the last couple weeks of March, as we were going in April to our new city. It seemed that we had a band in town just about every other night for 2 weeks, ending with the last show I can remember at the Salt Palace, the Scorpions. I think White Zombie was about, and this was when I was with their drummer, Phil, again. Rest your soul, Phil. Rafters held a going away party for Kristen and I. And this was our laminate to get into the party. Rafters was this really cool rock bar here that had Dirty Looks, Danzig, Ricky Rockman, got a lot of band, Night Ranger, bands like that. So this was our going away laminate for our party that they threw for us. All right. So Rafters held the going away party for Kristen and I, including some smaller national acts we hung with as the entertainment. Mozart was one of them. And if you guys think you haven't heard of Mozart, yeah, you have. At least the lead singer and the guitar player. You know the song Flies? The Flies Got You Where I Want You? Adam used to sing, and the guitar player used to be in Mozart. So we were hanging with them, and if you haven't heard Mozart, in here at YouTube, look up Mozart, Japan is Calling. Mozart. Mozart. However you spell Mozart, I don't fucking know. But anyway, and I do like class. I am an intelligent woman, but I don't have to know everything. Like the name of people or position people are playing in a band that I'm not sleeping with. Yeah, I read that shit about Jeff Hanneman. I don't know if he was a bass player or guitar player. I was friends with Slayer. I wasn't sleeping with any of them. So I don't have to remember your name or your instrument. Thank you very much. Anywho, if you know, you know. Okay, so it seemed the universe had set it up for Kristen and I to have one hell of a last shout before committing herself to a man outside the rock and roll arena. In the end, Kristen and I decided to have a no-holds-barred last 2 weeks. The only plan was to stay out of jail and off the news. Otherwise, all bets were off. One last fling. For Kristen, anyway. But to start, I will bring back that roadie that I had pissed off just months earlier by sneaking off with Dave gone. Yet again, I would torture his poor little East Coast ego unintentionally. His name was Borga. So he had worked for Depeche Mode, and he was the reason I actually got to meet Dave and was hanging out and stuff. And he always had a crush on me. Not like I think I'm the most beautiful chick in the world or every man needs to have me. No, it's just that's just the way the cookies crumbled with this one. And he was always very desperate, very shy, very kind of. He would get angry like after the Depeche Mode concert once, because we had hung out with him the night before. But after the concert that night, he was just pissed as fuck. And he wasn't even working for Depeche. He was working for the opening band. So, and I think he did Lights originally. So, yeah, he was like, when he figured out that I was with Dave, when he saw me with Dave, he just threw a fucking tizzy fit like a 2-year-old the whole next day. Kind of pissed me off. But, you get over it. You feel bad, because, yeah, I wouldn't be throwing a fit like that, but, I get it. So Roadie had now moved on to being a tour manager for a not-so-well-known New York City band called Lotion. He had called to make sure I would be around for their 3-day stay in our fair metropolis. Of course Kristen and I would be there, and at the hotel the second they all pulled in and out. Did he pull out? Anyway, we... we had no clue who the band was. But they sure as hell had a couple haughty members. Kristen instantly zeroed in on the lead singer, and I slyly began to reel in the bass player. But the roadie, being his expected self, like I said, Depeche Mode, would barely take his smothering grasp off me in an attempt to keep from happening what ended up happening with Depeche and Dave gone. I slipped right through his fingers. It was a classic cock-blocking coming from desperation. But what that roadie didn't know was cock-blocking was my specialty and no one could divert me from my intended rocker. This was looking not to be so pretty for the roadie, because, sweetie, I can hurdle that shit like no tomorrow. I see it coming and I just hike up my skirt. I'm over that hurdle. Kristen and I had been welcomed in by not only Borga, but by the band guys as well. We went and got them their drug of choice to help make their stay an even more comfortable one. Because every groupie has a drug dealer, let me tell you. They come in handy in helping secure a little rock and roll night. And it's not like I did a shit ton of drugs. I tried cocaine a couple times. Wasn't my thing. I smoked weed, and this is what we were getting for the guys in Lotion. They were weed smokers. And that's it. So, but... Anyway, the drinking and smoking commenced into the early morning hours. Now, normally, when hanging with the bands, coupling is just a natural part of the ebb and flow. Tonight, however, despite the foursome of chemistry that was happening between Kristen, singer, bass player, and me, there seemed to be a stiff wall holding our guys back. We couldn't figure it out at all. Well, seems that the roadie, Borga, had told the guys I was off limits, even going so far as to put TMGF on my laminate for the show. TMGF stood for tour manager's girlfriend. Ugh, those ridiculous codes again. This one, however, would not stick to my lammy, nor would it to me. Because there's always, back then, if your picture wasn't on the laminate all the time, so there was always a code. And here's the laminate in question. Right here. Lotion. And right on the back, which is a couple of guys from Lotion holding the kiss thingy, but right on the back, right about here, I think it was. I can just see it. It said TMGF. Sharpie don't stick. Not to this. So I wiped that bitch right off. It was no longer TMGF. Because I never was TMGF. I never even kissed TM. I never did anything with him. He just was trying so desperately to manipulate the situation. And that doesn't ever work for any of us. So I wiped it right off. Kristen and I ended up going home alone that night. Well, early in the morning. Much to the chagrin of our own plans. We took too much time getting down to the show the next. We took too much time getting ready and down to the show the next day, which was the day of show, because we'd just been hanging out for 2 days, and they were going to be in town the next night. And we were going to dinner, just hanging out, enjoying the company. Tour manager would like sit on this side of me, and bass player would be on this side of me. I'd be like, yeah, tour manager. I'd be flirting with the bass player, but I'd still try to be nice to Borga. But he was just one of those guys that Hedwig and the Angry Inch. He was angry. Angry. But okay, so anyway, we took too much time getting down to the next day, the day of show, according to the band guys. They watched the roadie, who supposedly had a ring in the hotel safe for me, wigging out and calling the singer in the bassist room repeatedly, asking if Kristen and I were there. He could swear he heard us coming down the hall. Roadie had informed me the night before that after the show, he had a very beautiful night planned for us. Why? I'm not sure. I had not ever been with him, so I didn't understand why he would be making an imaginary romance with the likes of me. But his words coldly went in one ear and out the other. I wanted a bass player, so I was going to get the damn bass player, roadie approval or not. As Kristen and I arrived to the gig at the Zephyr, after briefly getting our lammies from the roadie, lammies, there's a few on here. Smaller bands. But anyway, briefly getting our lammies from the roadie and rubbing off the code, we ran into the singer and the drummer, who just wanted to go smoke with us in the car. They were specific that it was not the bus, the bass player, because when Borga's attitude was making them all uncomfortable, and his obsessiveness was making all of us uncomfortable. So they did not want to go on the bus, because as Kristen and I pulled up, we parked across the street from the gig, the Zephyr, which was this iconic place in Salt Lake. It's been since torn down, and now it's a parking lot, which really sucks, because a lot of killer music. Typo, it's part of our 2 weeks. Anyway, but so we had parked across the street. And we saw Borga coming in and out of the gig, going to the bus, checking the bus, coming out, stopping, looking everywhere. And we just were like slumped down. Kristen had this red mini Bronco at the time. And we're just slumped down in the seats, just watching him. So they were specific that it was not the bus. Now the bass player, his name was Rob, had hemmed and hawed about coming with us, and didn't write at first. As we all lit up and hit the joints we were passing around, the story came out that Borga was calling the rooms and even coming to the doors and looking to see if Kristen and I were stashed in either of the rockers' rooms. He was making the band guys uncomfortable with his insecurity and paranoia. I told him the history between their tour manager and I, or specifically that there was none. Singer and drummer relaxed for a bit more after our powwow, and Singer went right for Kristen because of it. Yay! At least one of us would get laid tonight. Oh, but make that two. Kristen, Singer, and I had barely made it in the door when bass player accosted me to go smoke. He didn't want to be in the club much longer due to the stomping roadie who was silently going about the place, so he needed me to sneak him out. As we sat in the car and talked about the roadie's antics that day, bass guy, because when I wrote the book, I forgot his name, but it was Rob from Lotion. He's married in New York now. He's still hot, though. But good, I'm glad he's happy these days. He looks happy. I think everybody should be. Okay, and as we sat in the car and talked about the roadie's antics that day, bass guy said he had been particularly grilled because roadie knew he and I were attracted to each other. That was it. I was going into defiance mode. No one got this hysterical over a never happened rock and roll romance and got away with it. And just as my mind flipped into bitch mode, we saw him, roadie, standing outside the club across the street, pacing, looking up and down the sidewalks, hands in pockets, looking a bit disturbed. Roadie looked to the band bus and back around the streets again. We watched for a good 5 minutes, wondering if he was going to spot the car that was actually right in front of him. Fuck it. Rob and I decided to give the roadie a show of his own. I bent over the driver's seat and put my head down in his lap, pretending to blow. The plan was when Rhodey looked over, bass guy would tell me, and I would come up wiping my mouth in mockery. But I mean, nothing was really going on in the car. It really wasn't happening yet. Not yet. It was just, I was gonna do it, and plus, I was like flirting with the bass player, so I'm like, this will give him an idea, So, and we were both just in fucking, we're both in fuck it mode because fuck that, no. Borga was acting like a goddamn caged animal over something that was never gonna happen. Oh, but it gets worse. Okay, where was I? Da-da-da-da. And I went wiping my mouth. But instead, Rhodey never saw us, so we just made out instead. Time came quickly that we had to go back into the show for sound check. Damn! Bass guy was reeled in and was a damn good kisser. So yeah, Rob and I we just decided, he's like, oh, he's back and he never saw us. So I was like, okay, so I popped back up and he just grabbed me and started kissing me. And I was like, fuck yeah, finally. God, Rob, it took you long enough. I mean, we made out like in sneaky corners when, Rhodey wasn't looking a couple days before. But yeah, never really got down to brass tactics. So when we were in the car, he was very, very hesitant because he didn't want to step on people's toes, but then he realized there were no toes. But then he knew things were going to be awkward with him and their tour manager. But he was just, and then he said, he's like, fuck it. And we just started making out like fucking horny teenagers. Fortunately, as we walked hand in hand into the club, Rhodey was upstairs, up with management taking care of business upstairs because there was a second story to where the dressing rooms and stuff were to the Zephyr. High fives were made and rockers went off to the dressing room once our getaway plans had been made. Because we did. Like, the second they got off the stage, we were out the fucking door. Like, we knew Rhodey would have to stay around and Borga would have to do his work. So Rob, and I can't remember the singer's name because I don't have to. I wasn't sleeping with him. And Kristen and I, we just kind of made a little powwow. We're like, all right, this is how we're going to get away for the end of the show. Okay? Basically pulled up, they jumped in the car, and we peeled the fuck out. High fives were made and rockers went off to the dressing room once our getaway plans had been made. Rhodey came down and set us up at the bar for the show, putting us on the band's tab. Meh, we would drink on the band all right, but she and I would do much more on a couple of them later. They thanked Kristen and I from the stage for our hospitality during their stage, enraging the little Rhodey even more. Fuck. He was now breathing down my throat and trying to physically cock-block me after the show by trying to take my hand and not let go. I made the excuse that Kristen needed me to take her back to the hotel because she was too tipsy to drive, and that I would be right back after I dropped them off. Yep, right back. The next time I would see Rhodey, Rob would be balls deep in me in the backseat of Kristen's baby Bronco. Because we dropped them off at the hotel and she's like, here, just take the car keys because we knew we couldn't get any peace and quiet in his hotel room. We knew that Borga would be pacing the hallways again, calling the rooms, where are the girls? So we knew we could not have an enjoyable evening. So, and I had a roommate at the time. I think I was staying at my mom's because I moved out of my roommates and was saving my money to move to Seattle in a couple weeks. So I couldn't just take him back to my place. We were trying to figure out where to go. And he's like, fuck it, let's just go in the back parking lot. There's nobody back there. Nobody. No, and there were no cars. Like, there was a couple cars that we just kind of parked between that we were able to kind of camouflage ourselves, but then one had left that we didn't notice because we were too busy fucking. All right, so the next time I would see Rhodey, bass guy would be balls deep in me in the backseat of Kristen's baby Bronco. The reason we were there was because he and I, along with the stoner wisdom of Kristen and his lead singer, had decided that going to his room would be a serious buzzkill considering the behavior of the Rhodey earlier in the day. So instead of pulling away from the hotel I had suggested, he said we should stay close by. We ended up in what we thought would be a secluded spot in the back parking lot and proceeded to steam up the windows. I guess that is why we didn't notice that after a while the hotel van the first time as it sat next to us for about 10 seconds before racing off around to the side of the hotel. Meh. Base Guy and I were having mad fun sex and didn't even think we had been found. But we had. Roadie had made his own way back to the hotel and began pounding on the singer's door. Kristen and Singer told him nothing, and they said they had no idea where we were. They thought I was supposed to pick him up. They're like, they thought we, because they told Kristen and Singer, were like, we thought she was supposed to pick you up. Oh, no. We're so sorry. Oh, no. We all knew. But they thought I was supposed to pick him up. Uh-huh. Then he then proceeded to get the hotel valet to get the van out for a look to see if he could find me. Because he couldn't find the bass player either. Well, of course. Well, after a second look in the hotel van, about 30 minutes later, while we were already putting on our clothes. So the first time, it's like we were just going at it, and out of the corner of our eyes, we just saw the white hotel van. We didn't think anything of it because somebody might need to be picked up at the airport. Didn't even faze us. So we were just in the back seat, still going at it. I'm riding him like I am the fucking queen of the damn rodeo. So, after a second look in the hotel van about 30 minutes later, because he made him do another round, because he was like, wait, isn't that Kristen's car? He then proceeded, while we were already putting on our clothes, Roadie found us and began banging on the car window. He had found us before, but just now got up the nerve to actually do something about it. I tied my shoe and looked at the bass player, laughing my ass off. He decided he should get out alone and deal with it. After all, he was the guy's boss. Okay, no worries for me. I fixed my lipstick and Bass Guy climbed out of the back seat and to the side of the Bronco, where the roadie angrily stood. They got into the van and had some sort of a talk. 20 minutes later, Bass Guy came and got me and held my hand in show that he had no intentions of backing down. Roadie suddenly, after bitching at me for leading him on. I said no. No is no, dude. That's not a lead on. No. Said he was going to be getting married. Bass Guy and I looked at each other quizzically, knowing whomever it was had just been decided on due to current circumstances. We let Roadie finish his bitching as if it was his consolation prize before walking off and finishing our night in the comfort of his bed right next to the roadie's room. Not to let that night rain on our parade of goodbyes, Kristen and I went off to the next band without a thought of the last. Typo Negative was playing the Zephyr, and luckily, I had met them before in New York City and had a friend working for the tour. So, of course, Kristen and I were going to make a night of it all. How did it end up? I don't know. Read the book. Chapter 11. Because Typo was kind of fun. This time we hung out with Typo a lot. So I'd met him in New York City when, again, whoops, there goes my laminates. When Marie and I had ditched Def Leppard, and that was one of the bands we ran into. We met the guys in Typo before their Bloody Kisses album. So they were part of our last 2 weeks in Salt Lake City. And then they were our first band in Seattle. But anyway, tell me what you guys think. And other groupie ladies, other rockers, what is your cock block story? And how did you handle it? Because I just went into full, God damn it. I keep doing this. I did go into full bitch mode. It probably wasn't the nicest way to go about it, but you just get to that point. I had known this guy through several tours. We were just friends. I never even, he would try and kiss me. I'm like, no. I put my hand up. And I'm like, it's not like that. I like you as a friend, but, that's about it. And then he just, when Depeche Mode happened, and we were all hanging out afterwards, because I had just won the Miss World Topless to go to Vegas to do the show at the Stardust and to be on pay-per-view and shit like that. I knew I was going to get a shit ton of feature shows. So we were celebrating the night before Depeche Mode. And Borga was trying to hit on me. And Dave was like, dude, she's not into you. Just give it up. And I'm like, no, just, we were drinking. And Dave just was like, hey, I'm leaving. He's like, you coming? And Borga had gone to the bathroom on the bus. Because, you know, a lot of times when the bars close and you guys don't want to go up to your room to party, we go on the buses. So we were just hanging on The's bus because Borga was working with the, not Depeche Mode. He was working with the opening band. So, yeah, he had tried to cock block me. He was trying to, like, put his arms around me, trying to kiss me, being all sloppy drunk. And Dave, he gets up to go to the bathroom, and Dave's like, no, let's get the fuck out of here. He's like, I'm saving you for tonight. I'm like, you getting me off too? He's like, yeah. I'm like, let's go. We're there. Boy, did he get off. No regrets, because if you know, you know. One of the best rock and roll fuck I've had so far. Oh my God. No regrets. So, and he had tried hitting me when he was a trickster and Kiss, and I'm kind of off limits around Kiss because I used to date their drummer. Not that the band says that, but I just don't like anybody else in Kiss. And I wasn't into anybody, the trickster or their road crew. So, yeah, and the day after at the show, so Borga didn't know where I went, and, you know, Danny was there, Kristen was, a lot of us were just hanging out, being silly. Danny was in visiting from Southern SoCal after she had just moved. But so at the show, once Borga realized that I showed up with Dave gone, because he had tried calling me and left a message, he was like, oh, you're on the guest list. I was like, oh, no. Coming with the lead singer. I already got my laminates. You know, I already got my lammy. So he saw Dave and I enter the gig to the Salt Palace together. That pissed that roadie off. He spent the rest of the day slamming things around, throwing fits, stomping, just being a general fucking asshole, you know. And the guys in the didn't realize it until after the show when Dave and I walked onto their bus because, you know, Kristen and everybody else was there. So we went to hang on their bus after the show before Dave and I went back to the hotel. So when we saw him on that bus and he was just throwing a fit, and everybody's like, what's wrong with him? And Dave was like, because I stole his chick. I'm like, I was never his chick. Like, I was just his fucking jerk-off fantasy, I guess. I don't know. But, so yeah, then he did it again because, you know, no is no, and I'm not going to be bullied. And if you're going to bully me, then guess what? I'm going to come at you in spectacular fashion. And I'm going to get off while I'm doing it. Like I did that night. So again, ladies, rockers, tell me in the comments what your cock block was, how much fun you had getting out of it, and why, you know, talk about it down in the comments. And everybody, thank you so much for always getting to the end of the episodes with me, for sitting through my silly stories, you know, especially when I read the book or when my sinuses or my allergies are acting up. They're getting better, I swear, but like I said, the between the weather and the high winds and everything, it's just so horrible right now. So I really appreciate that you guys get through with my allergies so bad. But thank you guys so much for always getting to the end. And if you guys are just joining us, you know, see me on Soft White Underbelly or other interviews or just kind of TikTok or whatever, and just sort of wandered your way here, welcome. And please hit the subscribe, become part of the family. Let's get this channel big, because, you know, most of the rock channels that are big are either Justin Hawkins, Tim from Kicking Herald, or AI generated bullshit that they don't even talk on, or, you know, have the facts straight. It's not by somebody who's going to give you a realistic, or they weren't even there. So, and most of that information is like wrong, like 90% wrong. So let's get this channel out here, because we are genuine here. The groupies that I interview, the stories that I tell, the things that we do, this is the real deal. You're not going to hear what life was really like on the road during the last days of hedonism of rock and roll anywhere else. You're going to find it here with me, the other groupies that I interview. So let's get this channel out. Let's stop the click for cash AI bullshit. Time to get real again. Here we are. So thank you, everybody. So hit that subscribe, hit the share, hit my bells, and we will see you next time on Cocktails and Rocktails. Cheers, big ears.